Hello and welcome to episode 32 of the How to Survive podcast. My name is Chris and joining me as ever is Joe.
Hello, thank you for having me.
This week we're talking about You're Next, the 2013 slasher film directed by Adam Wingard. It's a great film. I don't think it's jumping ahead too much to say. That's my opinion on it. Joe, did you feel the same?
Yes.
It's a lot of fun. If you haven't seen You're Next, then do go out and seek it out, watch it, and come back and listen to this podcast afterwards, because as ever, this podcast is a spoiler encompassing zone.
It's a spoiler incubator.
Spoilerific podcast.
So in that vein, perhaps it's best to recap the entire film for anyone who hasn't seen it.
Yes, so the film opens on two anonymous people having sex, an early establishment of the sex equals death paradigm, Joe, I'm sure you'll agree.
That's exactly what I've got written here.
Yeah, which is a slasher film favourite and a favourite of our podcast. So the couple finish and put on some music and are swiftly murdered, basically. We then meet Erin, who is on her way to meet her boyfriend's family for the weekend at their sort of stately country home in America. Her boyfriend is Crispin, who is the son of a wealthy arms dealer, is it suggested?
Yeah, he worked for some sort of defence facility.
Yeah, a weapons company. I think it's called KPM or something, which I'm sure isn't a real weapons company. But
Erin has a bit of a crisis of conscience about meeting these people and jokes with Crispin that I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm sure everything will be fine this weekend.
Yeah, nothing could possibly go wrong. But there's a bit of a family reunion going on, so it's not just his parents there. His parents are Aubrey and Paul, and then his brother and wife are there, Drake and Kelly. His younger siblings are also there, Felix and Amy, and their respective partners, Z and Tariq. Tariq, interestingly, by the way, Joe, is played by Ty West, who is a horror movie director.
Yes.
And he is also in the film, his character is a film director, although he directs documentaries.
Yes, and he very specifically does not direct commercials.
Yes, so there's a bit of tension clear between the different members of the family, but everything is going off relatively without a hitch, and they sit down for a dinner together, where a big fight between Crispin and Drake erupts over whether or not Crispin should have slept with a student, whether it was ethical, and the student in question is in fact Erin, or an ex-student possibly. And while the table descends into a big family argument, Tariq notices something amiss out of the window, and so gets up to investigate and is promptly shot in the head by a crossbow. And the family quickly realise that their house is under siege by this assailant,
who continues to fire crossbow bolts into the building blindly,
almost hitting various members of the family before finally hitting Drake in the back while he's trying to protect his mother. So he's gravely injured, and they manage to shelter in a hallway. Tariq is dead, but the rest of the family are okay. They realise that mobile phones have been cut off as well, using a blocker, which Felix seems to know a little something about, curiously.
They're using a blocker. They're illegal, but you can get them.
They're illegal, but you can get them. So Amy decides to make a break for it.
Yeah, that's the daughter of the family.
Yeah, the younger sister. She decides to make a run for it. Felix, the younger brother, and the father hold the doors, and they're going to open it dramatically at the last second as she sprints out, so the crossbow wielding assailant doesn't realise she's running out to the very last second, and they whip open the door, and unknown to Amy, she runs straight into a garrote wire which has been set up at perfect neck height outside the door, which immediately cuts her throat, and she dies very quickly and suddenly. This is too much for poor Aubrey, who is put to bed upstairs while they try and figure out a plan, when another murderer appears from underneath her bed and kills her. And so basically this is the sort of template the film takes on. One by one, members of the family get picked off. Next to die is Kelly, who is the injured Drake's wife. She runs out of the house and into the woods, and is stalked and killed outside the neighbour's house by the crossbow wielding assailant.
Mhm.
They all wear animal masks as
Yeah,
well, so it's difficult to tell them apart.
And if you were to read through the Wikipedia pages and stuff for this film, you'd see the characters referred to as things like fox face or that's all I remember. But
pig head or whatever.
Yeah.
And then Paul, looking for the man who killed his wife in his house, goes upstairs and is confronted by runs into Felix and Z, also upstairs. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, a man grabs Paul, the father, from behind and cuts his throat. And we realise that Felix and Z are in fact in on the whole plan. Meanwhile, Crispin is another member of that party to make a run for it. I think he tries to get to a car or run to find help. So he runs out of the house. Which leaves Drake, who is gravely injured and unconscious.
He passed out as well from looking at his own wound.
Yeah. He pulls there's a great scene where Kelly takes off across the driveway out of the house, and Drake tries to follow her, but his arrow snags on the garrote wire, which he ducks underneath, and he decides to pull the arrow out, and then seeing how far the arrow has gone into him, he passes out, which is quite funny. So Erin is left pretty much alone in the house, or with Felix and Z at least, who she doesn't realise are
part of
have designs on her life. And a assailant surprises her through a window, knocks her to the ground, but she manages to gain the upper hand, and using a meat tenderizer basically caves his head in. Very brutal scene,
squelchy scene.
Very wet sounds in this film. And Drake, having woken up after passing out, goes down to the basement with Felix, who again he doesn't realise is all part of the big plan, where Felix kills him. So it's basically just Erin left at this point in a house full of people who want to kill her. She realises that Felix and Z are in on it, and so the tables sort of turn, because as we discover, Erin grew up on a survivalist compound.
Of course she did,
which is unbeknownst to her boyfriend. She hasn't told her boyfriend yet, because it's a bit weird. And so she manages to lay a few traps, like nails on a floorboard and all sorts of things like that, and manages to turn the tables and kill a number of the assailants, and then eventually manages to get into a protracted fight with Felix and Z in a kitchen, where she kills Felix with an upended blender.
She drives it kind of into his head, then turns it on.
We'll talk about that more later. And then stabs Z in the head, at which point Felix's phone rings, Felix having previously turned the jammer for the phone off. And it's Crispin, who is in fact, like Felix, in on the crime. And he returns to the house and realises that Erin is the sole survivor, having killed everyone else. And then tries to sort of win her over by explaining
money.
Explaining that they did it because they needed the money, and that he stands to inherit several $1 million from the family, and even proposes to her. But Erin is not convinced and kills him as well. When he's bleeding on the floor, he says, "Why?" And she says, "Why not?" At which point a police officer turns up and shoots Erin, and she's wounded. The police officer then calls in the crime, the bloody scene that he's stumbled upon, and goes to head into the house, unaware that Erin has previously set a trap with a giant axe hanging above the front door. He opens the front door, and the final shot of the film is the axe swinging towards his head. Which is a pretty tragic ending in its own way. Because presumably, that's how the film ends. What would you have said is going to happen to Erin now?
Well, she's basically off scot-free, because he saw her kill Crispin, implicating her, and then he immediately died. So she's no longer implicated.
But her fingerprints are all over a trap that killed a police officer.
That's true.
My interpretation of it was that she's not going to be able to explain away the fact that this police officer is dead, and that she wasn't part of she wasn't part of the murder spree,
right?
Rather than being the survivor, because basically she's stuck.
Right, I'm with you. I don't know, because she could theoretically. I mean, you could argue it either way.
Yeah,
and she's a survivalist, man. She's probably just going to wipe the fingerprints off it.
Yeah, that's true. I really enjoyed the film.
Yeah.
Joe, what did you think of your next?
I absolutely love this film.
Okay.
I love the characters. I love the set pieces. I love the story, which is something that you can rarely say about a slasher film, I think. Particularly the sort of ones we cover, which are some teenagers go to a lake and are murdered. Essentially, you've got the same personality types as you do in any other slasher film, right?
Yeah.
You've got the... actually, they're all unlikable. Everyone in this film's unlikable. And that's the same as every other slasher film, which is good. Because it means when they die, you go, that's actually good.
Yeah.
You don't, the whole thing's not a depressing, parade of murders of likable people.
Sure.
But yeah, it's very good. And it's coherent as well, in a way that a lot of these sort of indie horror films might not be. But it's got its own very strong storyline. The motives make sense, and they stand up even at the end of it. You don't have to rely on it was a paranormal curse.
Yeah.
Or,
it's very simple, in fact, isn't it?
They just want money.
Yeah. I really like the film as well. And obviously the family feud element is hinted from the start. Even the interplay between the various members of the family. I'm sure, like me, you had an idea that Felix was going to be in on it.
Yeah.
Part of that is because of his obviously goth killer girlfriend. The scene where she tries to coerce him into having sex next to his mum's body is quite
gruesome.
Yeah, grim. But I love that the family feuds continue even after the crisis has started.
Yeah.
So they they're still berating each other and each other's ideas of what they should do.
Yeah.
In that same dynamic, the older brother being
think he knows best. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
I made a note. I said, so do you think that would be what happened? I mean, because if say for instance now we're not arguing, but if this building caught fire, I assume we'd be quick thinking and not oh no, we'll go this way. No, we'll go this way.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think emotions are heightened during a crisis,
especially when several members of your family have just been murdered.
Yeah, exactly. I think because we've got such a good and well-tooled dynamic already, Joe.
Yeah.
That we would be all right,
okay.
But maybe a lesser podcast duo would not fare so well. I found the film quite funny as well in its own way. Like Drake walking around with his arrow in his back, and then they make a point of it, catching on the garrote wire and stuff. That made me laugh. And obviously it's a lot of very dark humour.
Yeah.
Let's
be clear, it's not knee slapping.
No, it's not like
slapstick.
No, but it's very dark, bloody humour.
Yeah.
In its own way. Like for a horror film and a slasher film, it's got a very good sense of humour.
Yeah, I think so. And it's brutal as well. I mean, the death scenes are brutal in the sense of imagine that happens to you and you'd be like, oh my goodness. And like we said earlier, it's very squelchy and the Foley studio must have had a great time making this.
Yeah.
But it doesn't stray into gross out territory, if you know what I mean. So if you watch something like Hostel, where they're just trying to make you feel queasy, it's not that bad. But it's just ugh.
Not at all, no. It's got some great scenes as well. One scene that I liked in particular is when Erin is talking to Z about her survivalist upbringing, and it's intercut with nails hammering into the floorboards because she's laying the floor nail trap. And it's she'll say something and then you'll see a shot of Z and you'll see a nail going into the wood and then it will get closer each time on the nail and it's racking up the tension. And even though nothing happens directly after that scene, I really liked the way the whole film is building up that tension.
Yeah.
And then the sort of final third of the film completely turns and changes and let's talk about Erin.
Yeah, sure.
Because she's, I think, the best survivor character we've had maybe on the show.
Yeah, well, she's certainly up there with the Ellen Ripleys,
Mark Watney.
Yeah, Jason Bourne.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I wrote down some traits. It's basically she's she's been listening to the How to Survive podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Calm in bad situations.
Yes,
right?
yeah.
She's the only one of the family of the group who aside from Felix, who knows exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
She's the only one who remains calm and collected.
Level-headed, yeah.
Yeah. She fights very well and kills when given the opportunity, which is something that we always say.
Yeah,
especially in slasher films.
Don't just knock someone over and hope for the best.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like the first opportunity she has is when she like knocks the guy to the ground with a meat tenderizer.
Yeah, and
she makes the most
without blinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, you know, every kill after that, she's like, right, this person is dying now.
Yeah.
Like, this is what's happening. She's got good siege advice to give out, locking all the doors and windows, staying together and staying inside.
Stay away from the windows, yeah.
Exactly. And she's got the survivalist upbringing, which means all this stuff comes naturally to her, which is in no greater evidence than when she uses the Joe Sherville window escape technique.
I love that.
Yeah.
Whenever I see a film and I think they're trapped on the top floor, take your chances by jumping out the window.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what she does.
That is exactly what she does. And you've said it a number of times in this podcast. We've had a few people who've done it, not quite to the degree that Erin does.
No.
Because it's like she sees the body of Paul.
Yeah.
She sees the body of Paul. She realises there's a man behind her, and she is gone.
Yep.
She's like a bullet out
Head
that
first
window.
out
Yeah,
the
exactly.
window.
Yeah. It's excellent.
Yeah.
Great technique.
Yeah, although she does end up with about 6 inches of glass in her thigh.
Yeah, it doesn't shy away from injury detail.
No, but then she sells the injury well. You know, it's not one of these slasher films where, you know, they take a broken leg and then they're just walking fine afterwards.
Yeah.
She has to deal with that injury, but then she's a survivalist expert. Let's talk about that again, because did you not feel it was a little bit Deus Ex? I was raised in a survival camp.
Well, a little bit, but there's nothing. It's not like I don't know. I think it's brought in fairly early on in the film.
Yeah,
and it's like, I mean, it's surely better than her doing all the stuff she does in the film and not having a reason for it.
What if she was in the Girl Guides or something?
Yeah, but Girl Guides doesn't teach you how to like make nail floorboard traps.
Yeah, that's true.
Or like, you know, how to defend against a siege or set up an axe trap.
Maybe you said she listens to the podcast. Maybe she's just very into survival.
Yeah, maybe. Well, yeah, okay. Well, I didn't mind it. Basically, is my I understand your concern,
because it's a bit like,
yeah,
it's lucky. I mean, we're going to talk about how the survivalist stuff really comes into its own and goes, you know, beyond the pale, but that's in the kitchen fight scene. But before that, let's talk about the real showdown, the final showdown, which is a war of words, isn't it?
Yeah.
Between Crispin and Erin.
Okay.
He spends like 5 minutes trying to convince her, like, without her even replying once. He's like, "Oh well, you see, it's because I'm so wealthy. I thought we could, you know, I could pay off your student loans. We could move to an exotic country. Well, I mean, he goes on like this for some time. My question to you is: would you be won over by the promise of wealth?
I think you'd be annoyed to the extent that wealth probably wouldn't appeal at that right moment, especially not with him.
No, but you could kill him later.
Yeah, but you can't.
What's the use in killing him now when you could actually gain more from it?
No, but it's like she can get away with it now.
There's a deeper aspect to survival, Chris, which we've never discussed before in this podcast.
Right.
And that's, my hypothesis is you should do what you can in order to ensure you have the facilities and the resources to survive for as long as possible. Now, if someone offered you $500,000 to essentially keep your mouth shut, I consider that faulty logic to just kill them instantly.
I wouldn't trust that someone who'd hired killers to kill their entire family, you'd never feel safe with them, would you?
Well, kill them then. But kill them at a time when... go through the marriage, because he said he loves you. Go through the marriage so that you are the de facto...
But you might go, oh, right then, and hug him or whatever, and then he'd kill you right there.
But you're a survivalist expert. You know,
so you never hug anyone ever again?
Well, no, because you just say, okay, I'll give you a deal. I agree to these terms, but in order to show penance and to ensure my safety, you have to like burn your hands quite badly for the time being, so that You can't wield a weapon.
I don't think.
Just take him into the kitchen, turn the stove on, stick your hands into the flames.
We talk about long-term survival.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
This is as far as Watney's Index has ever been stretched. Right.
Watney's Index being the idea that when Mark Watney in The Martian was stuck on Mars, he had to eat potatoes, and if you eat too many potatoes for a long time, there'll be nutritional issues, I suppose.
Yeah, side effects associated with his diet that was exclusively the potatoes, which might have ended up in his the shortening of his lifespan overall. Well, what I was going to say was, do you think Watney's Index applies in terms of moving in with a known killer?
Well, this then
again, he describes himself as a pacifist.
Yeah,
and he left the building. So maybe there is something in it. What I would say, Joe, is that you recently proposed to your girlfriend.
I did.
And I presume that was in a romantic and well thought out way.
I hadn't just killed my family.
Yeah, right. So, how to survive top tip.
Yeah.
If you're the person in question.
Yeah.
The person proposing. Bad idea to propose having just murdered your entire family.
Yeah.
Put the potential spouse through a night of hell, and like the other thing is that, I mean, you've got if you know someone, you love someone, you should be able to get a read on their facial expressions, and he should be able to tell that she's not in the mood. She's not going to be receptive to
a proposal.
No, exactly.
No.
You got to time it right.
Yeah. So we're doing how to survive a proposal at the moment.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, if you had a, 0 to 10 as to how well a proposal could go.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
10 would be like yes, and I've won the lottery.
Right.
Or like I've always been a millionaire and I just never
kept
told
that secret.
Yeah.
So not only have you got me, the one you wanted, you also there's also a bonus to it.
Yeah. 0 would be murdered within minutes of asking by the person you asked.
Yeah. He's got the 0 there.
Yeah.
Yeah, -1.
Yeah. So an early how to survive tip there from me to Crispin was pick a better moment.
Yeah.
To
plan your proposal. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And also, people like to know the story of how the proposal happened. That's not a story that's going to be...
No, exactly. She's not going to go back to her parents. Yeah, you won't believe it. It was so romantic, right? Yeah. So I'd just murdered 4 or 5 men who were trying to kill me on the payroll of my new fiance.
Yeah. Crispin. Have you met Crispin?
Yeah. He's a hell of a guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's just come into a lot of money, actually. Yeah.
But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed the film.
Yeah.
I think it does a lot of things right that many slasher films that we watch do.
Yeah,
wrong.
well, I mean, that's... Are you comparing it to Friday the 13th Part 4?
Well, yeah, like we watch a lot of slasher films.
We do, yeah.
And most of them are rubbish.
Yes. I don't think I've seen... I mean, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is quite good, but still flawed.
Yeah. But yeah, this is definitely up there. It's one of the best we've watched.
I think it may be the best. I'm going to go as far as saying that it's... Because it satisfies enough of the tropes to be considered a slasher film, for sure. But it doesn't just rehash the same old shit.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about... Because I think a big part of the reason why it's so successful is because the characters are so interesting. Like the protagonist and also the villains.
Yeah.
And nowhere is that more in evidence, I think, than the dinner scene. Yes. Because you get a good... a good load of interaction between all the different characters. And the tension build up is really good, as well as the character development and establishing the dynamics of the family. I love uncomfortable dinner scenes.
Yes.
And
we'll get a chance to talk about that some more
next
week with 10 Cloverfield Lane.
Yeah, so next week we're covering the new film 10 Cloverfield Lane. So anyone who hasn't watched that, go out and watch it and await next week's podcast, because it is an interesting one to discuss, I'd imagine. But it got me thinking, what are some of your favourite horror movie dinner scenes?
Obviously, Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yes, that's a good one. I've forgotten about that.
Where the victim is a girl, I can't remember her name, but she's basically forced to endure the most disgusting meal ever, and then told that she's basically the main course.
Yeah. I had a couple on the list. There's a film Kill List.
Yes.
Which opens on a sort of 25-minute uncomfortable dinner sequence.
Yeah. It's like the worst nightmare situation for a dinner
worst
party.
social nightmare that you could ever imagine. Yeah, which is fantastic. Misery, which we covered way back in episode 5,
6, I think.
5 or 6.
Yeah. 5 was Misery. 6 was probably the next one.
The Loved Ones, which also had a very uncomfortable dinner scene.
Yeah. So do you think there's something about dinner scenes, because it's like a social nicety thing?
Yeah, it's like a forced interaction thing.
Everyone's got to be on their best behaviour at dinner, haven't they?
Exactly. Yeah. It's very, very uncomfortable. But yeah, I really like the dinner scene.
So one of my most cringy moments in all of cinema is the scene in Rachel Getting Married, where they're doing a rehearsal dinner for, I think, Rachel's wedding.
Okay.
And I can't remember the main character's name.
Spoilers for Rachel Getting Married.
Yeah, if you ever want to watch Rachel Getting Married, Anne Hathaway's character stands up and gives an impromptu speech, but it's just the most cringy thing you've ever heard. And
it's like a horror film.
It is, honest. I'm cringing thinking about it.
Yeah. Well, the next thing that I wanted to talk about was there's a moment in the film after Erin has realised that she's basically the only target left. She flees into the basement and is chased by one killer who she's already injured, who stood on the floorboard.
Yeah, right.
Earlier on he stands on the nailed floorboard trap.
It's a bit Home Alone, isn't it?
It is a little bit. This is very much. There is an element of Home Alone to this film. But she, what I like about that is that he because it's not attached to the floor. When he lifts his foot up, the board comes with it, and he's like flapping his foot around,
trying to get it
standing on it again. It's pretty fun. It made me laugh. But she goes into the basement, and down in the basement, she's rigged her digital camera, which we have seen earlier in the film.
Yeah, it's been
is Chekhov's digital camera, and it's flashing few second intervals, obviously taking photos, but like digital.
She's smashed through the light bulb, so the room is in otherwise perfect darkness.
Yeah, so this is something that she's planned for, and the result is that the killer, would-be assailant, can't see her, and is left like shielding his eyes as he walks forward, and then she appears and kills him. And I thought it was really interesting because obviously up until this point it's basically been a relatively by the numbers slasher film. This really marks a point in the film where it becomes like the opposite, and she is the one stalking the rest of them. Yeah, and that the rest of the killers are the ones that are going to be getting picked off one by one.
Yeah, exactly. There's a turning point in 28 Days Later or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
the music changes and you realise what's going on.
Yeah, but I like that because it flips the slasher film ideas on its head, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And it is very refreshing to have a female character who is a strong killer, essentially. We always talk about how in this podcast we've never been shy of speaking up about our feminist principles, so to speak. And aside from Ellen Ripley, we haven't had many sort of strong female heroes. Yeah, there's plenty of villains in Kathy Bates and
Girl from the Loved Ones.
Yeah, but yeah, it's good. It's good to have someone, a Lara Croft figure who we can get behind.
Yeah, there is an element of Lara Croft-ness to her. Yeah. But again, I think it is covered by her sort of
Survivalist
background. Yeah. And then obviously the climax of the film really is Erin taking on both Felix and Z in the kitchen. And so the blender kill that we talked about earlier, do you think that's the most original kill that we've covered on the podcast?
So, just to describe it, she essentially smashes him over the head with the blender to start with.
Yeah, the glass component.
Yeah, stunning him, breaking the glass.
Yeah.
She then kind of forces the blade part of the blender into his head and then turns it on. So, describe that mechanism to me, because I don't really get it.
How do you mean?
Well, does she just ram the blade so hard it embeds in his skull?
Yeah. Well, she lifts it over her head and then brings it down. Yeah. And it pierces the top of his skull and then presumably just sort of trepans him.
Yeah. When she turns it on.
Yeah. I'm sure it's not as. I'm sure it wouldn't work like that.
No, that's what I'm thinking.
It was like I was laughing out loud watching it. So it's brilliant fact. Like that sets is sort of like, you know, it sums up the whole film for me a little bit.
I mean, you can in real life it would have been much gorier and more horrible because he'd have been still alive for a while, you know, sort of mouthing "help me" or something, trying. And that really, Chris, thinking about it that way, takes the fun out of it, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does a little bit. Yeah. Joe Chevel ruining it for everyone. Yeah.
Do you think you could, if you had a knife now, drive it through the top of my head?
That's what happens to not a kitchen knife.
That's what I was thinking that when someone, it happens in films a lot, you know, a lot of kung fu films as well.
Yeah.
You'd imagine it would just glance off. It'd give a nasty
it'd be
graze,
horrible, yeah.
But
like flay a load of their head off.
Yeah, but to drive it through the skull.
Yeah, you got to have a very clean angle, probably. Yeah, angle of incidence.
Yeah, nasty.
So it's that time as ever, Joe. We move on to how we would survive if we found ourselves in your next. I've already said one of my How to Survive top tips, which was for Crispin to pick a better moment to propose to his girlfriend.
So your supposition there is that had he not proposed, he would have survived. That was enough of an insult.
I don't think the proposal benefited his chances of survival.
Do you think that was a tipping point there?
I think it just, you know, it's added possible fuel to an already roaring fire.
Yeah. So
I get what he's trying to do.
You've tried to have me killed, and now you want to marry me.
I get what he's trying to do, right? Because a lot of girls want to get married.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so he's dangling the carrot of marriage in front of Erin in the hope that she will ignore the bloody massacre of his entire family that he's paid for. But I don't think that if you put those on a scale, I think one weighs heavier than the other.
True, but it could be that she was like, I really want to kill this guy, but I do still.
Rule 3 of the podcast says that we cannot assume.
True, yeah, and it wasn't in the text, to tell either way.
Basically, we can't know whether him not proposing would have increased his chances of survival, but I would say, and this I suppose is a form of assumption, but I would say that I don't think it helped him.
No, fair enough. So my first idea on how to survive, I'm going to start with something we do sometimes, which is say the killers. They died, all of them. And I think a lot of that's down to the fact that they had shit masks with tiny eye slots, which make it very hard to survive. And if you're stumbling around with a nail in your foot, he would have seen that on the floor had he been wearing like a balaclava.
Yeah, that's true. Is there any reason they're wearing the masks?
Just to be creepy, I think.
Yeah,
because it doesn't really matter because they're going to murder everyone in the house anyway.
Exactly. Yeah, everyone's going to die. So whether or not you believe Crispin when he says that Erin is going to survive, because it does make sense. Because Crispin says that he wanted Erin to be alive and Z as well. They wanted those two to survive as innocent witnesses, basically, with the idea being they could testify that, you know, Crispin and Felix, they didn't have anything to do with it.
Right.
Yeah. Whether you buy that, I mean, it is a plausible explanation.
Yes.
But
so fine. If you have to conceal your identity, put a stocking over your head, or a
better form of disguise.
Yeah, exactly. Just an eye mask. Anything. Anything at all.
Anything better than that.
These masks are very specific plastic masks with tiny vertical eye holes, which I consider that to be a detriment when you're trying to navigate your way around a dark house with a lot of sharp objects.
Yeah, it doesn't help, does it?
No.
Once the ruse has been revealed as well, you know, when he's still wearing the mask. Is he still wearing the mask?
He puts it back on.
Yeah, he wears the mask when he's in the basement,
about
to be killed by Erin. Just take it off.
Yeah,
there's only one person left.
Yeah,
like either you're going to kill her,
or she's going to kill you.
Yeah, it's unlikely that she's going to see your face and then escape.
No,
and you're not going to die.
Exactly.
So yeah, well, I agree broadly. Now I have a bit of a more unusual suggestion. And this is this applies to a few of the characters in the film. Stick to your principles.
Okay, go on.
Early on in the film, Erin jokingly suggests that she wouldn't have come to meet the family if she'd realised that the family's wealth is from, the sale of weapons, or manufacture of weapons. Yeah. In a way that suggests, even though she's joking, I don't genuinely believe that everyone who's involved with weapons companies or whatever is a bad person.
Yeah.
But I would suggest that there's an element that deep down she does disagree with the propagation and sale of weaponry. So my suggestion to her would be stick to your principles. When you find this information out, go respectfully, thank you for the invite, but please pull over because I'd rather not come.
Yeah.
And then
I think it'll make me uncomfortable.
Yeah, exactly. Go back home, and then the events will play out without you. And in fact, that would work out best for Erin as well, because she wouldn't realise that Crispin was in on it, because you'd have the other innocent witness in Z, who could testify that Felix and Crispin were nothing to do with it. They would still inherit the money.
Yeah. They
would go to Paris, presumably on the pretense that Crispin wants to get over the sudden and horrible deaths of his entire family.
Yes.
At which place, thanks to her love and support, Crispin would propose to her in Paris in a much more romantic way.
Yeah. I mean, you seem to have a lot hinging on that proposal.
I think that it's very much the point at which Erin turns.
Yeah. That's a tipping point.
Yeah.
Okay.
But equally, Crispin, if he stuck to his principles as a self-proclaimed pacifist, none of the events of the film would have happened.
Right, yeah.
Because I presume he and Felix came up with the idea together, right?
Well, one of them must have come up with the idea.
One of them must have broached
the other one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if Crispin had the idea initially, if he was sticking to his principles as a pacifist, he'd have gone, oh, that's, that isn't an idea, but it's violent, so I don't want to do it.
Right.
If Felix said, oh, how about we kill our entire family, he would have said, interesting proposal, it's a thought that I've had myself, but I cannot endorse it in any way, and the authorities are on their way to your house for attempting to hire people to kill your whole family.
Right, exactly.
So had he stuck to his
spineless is what you're saying.
Exactly. Yeah. Like they're, people are too flaky on the things that they proclaim to care about in this film, and were they stronger on those things, then we might have had a tense and interesting melancholic drama about family interrelations. But instead we've got the bloody massacre that is your next.
Yes, exactly. Something more like August Osage County.
Exactly, yeah.
On the subject of people sticking to their guns, if you have made... I mean, you said he's an arms dealer. I don't know if it's as explicit as that. I know he just worked for a defence company. But if indeed he was an arms dealer, the father, you'd assume he'd have some guns.
Yeah, I did think this at one point,
a gun in the whole house. So either he is opposed to having guns in the house, which makes him a hypocrite, and therefore he should stick to his principles in order to survive.
Exactly.
Or he is an idiot for not having his guns.
Well, the fallacy that you've slipped into there, Joe, is the assumption that arms dealer means gun. When in fact, while a lot of people dislike taking their work home with them, I'm sure a gun dealer, gun manufacturer, someone who worked in a gun company probably would have guns lying around in the house. And perhaps the fact that Paul has no guns or access to guns that we see in the film, maybe that is evidence that his line of work lies more in the aircraft carrier or F-14 jet or something like that region.
Well, here's the point. So maybe the basement should have been filled with Exocet missiles.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like a nuclear submarine.
Yeah. And he would have survived.
He could have survived.
I
would argue that in that particular siege situation, a nuclear submarine would have been less helpful.
You could lock yourself in it.
You could, but I would imagine that it's not something that you can easily hide in your house.
No.
Like a panic room or something.
No, that's true.
And still, like Felix presumably would have known about this underground nuclear submarine and said, well, here's the code for it or whatever.
Yeah.
So don't
do they know, do arms dealers And we're assuming again that he is an arms dealer.
Yeah.
Are they just anyone who could do that? I mean, could I be an arms dealer? Can you be an arms dealer? Do you need to have some level of training?
Well, I presume you have to have some kind of clearance of some kind. You have to have a training in either engineering or science, mathematics.
But not in anything like combat.
Well, no, probably not. I mean, that's like saying politicians, they're not necessarily,
trained in combat.
Yeah, like, Secretary for Defence might not, be good at self-defense.
Yeah, fair enough. So my final thought on how to survive, and this is something that I think Erin probably has done in order to survive. So there's a phenomenon, I can't remember exactly what it's called, but essentially sometimes a plane will crash during takeoff. And some passengers have reported like themselves getting up and rushing to the exits, as you would if the plane had crashed. But even though there's smoke in the cabin and there's fires and stuff, some passengers remain rooted to the spot, just completely stunned, asleep while they're awake.
Sure.
And they're basically in a situation, according to psychology, where they're just so overwhelmed by the stimuli of what's happening around them, they can't react because they've never experienced anything like it.
Sure, it's like an overload of
new data, right?
Sure.
They're in shock.
Sure.
Right? But the people who aren't in shock, the ones who can get up and run around, are the ones who have thought ahead of time what would happen if the cockpit filled with smoke, or if something like that, right?
Right.
So my advice, in order to avoid something that, the mother, she gets taken off to bed because she's, hysterical.
Yeah.
Always assume anything could happen.
Okay.
Now, right now, we're talking,
and
I've several times thought, if Chris got shot in the neck with a crossbow right now, we're near a window, that could happen. Or if a light bulb exploded and showered us with glass, what would I do? Or if this electric fan turned on and made a run at us and chopped off one of our fingers, what would I do? These are things I think of all the time.
Okay.
And I think in a situation like that, I wouldn't be overwhelmed.
Okay. Well, one thing I would say is that for the second time in this episode, I'd like to invoke Watney's index.
Right.
So I would imagine that such thoughts on a constant basis will lead to stress, and stress is a well-known cause of heart problems.
Right.
And illness.
Do I seem stressed to you? Do I seem stressed to you?
Yes, Joe. Yes, you do. And if you were calmer in these situations, I mean, if you're stressed now, imagine what you're going to be like when the crossbow bolt hits my neck.
I wouldn't even bat an eyelid. That's the thing. That's the point. Is that I'm in such a heightened state of awareness.
You'd be cartwheeling out of the room immediately.
Exactly. I'd catch the crossbow bolt in the air with one hand, and I'd throw it back with the other. That's how adept.
Well, that's something that sounds like Erin would do.
Yeah.
Because essentially she does.
It's being prepared for the expect the unexpected, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, she basically does everything right, and that's why I'd like to nominate her, Joe, for How to Survive's Survivor of the Year.
Survivor of the Year.
Yeah.
I mean, for 2016 or just this run of.
I don't know. I didn't put that much thought into it, but I would say she's up there as the best survivor we've ever had.
Even Ellen Ripley.
Yeah.
Yeah, she does more quickly, doesn't she? She's very efficient.
Yeah. Because Ellen, sorry, it's difficult. Ellen and Erin. Ellen Ripley, she doesn't actually do any in the film that we've covered. At least she doesn't do any offensive tactics.
No, she doesn't call anyone twats or spit at them or anything.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
She doesn't go on the attack.
Yeah.
Which Erin most certainly does. So
exactly,
we see her capabilities in defense, evasion, and assault situations.
Are you suggesting, Chris?
Yeah.
That Erin from your next is a better survival tactician than Tommy from Friday the 13th, the final chapter?
I would suggest that 1,000 times.
What about Kevin McAllister?
Kevin McAllister from Home Alone?
Yeah.
Well, he's in the How to Survive Survivors Hall of Fame.
Right,
obviously. Lifetime Achievement Award.
Yes.
Much like how kids often get like sort of police bravery awards.
Yeah.
We like to hand it out to any child survivors.
What about Mark Watney, who made it back from
Mars?
Mars?
But his escape from Mars was he was a passenger.
Right.
In the,
Okay. Yeah.
You know,
along for the ride.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, get in touch if you're listening to this podcast with your suggestions for Survivor of the Year. Let's say, by episode 52, we will have done
a whole year. Yeah.
We'll have done a whole year, and we'll decide from that pool, or maybe from episode 50. Every 50 episodes, we'll decide,
who's the
someone will go into the How to Survive Survivors Hall of Fame.
Right. Okay.
And to join Kevin McAllister. So, if you'd like to get in touch, the email address is, as ever, howtosurviveshow@gmail.com. And Joe, I think you've got an email from someone who's done just that.
Exactly, yes. Kieran has been in touch. He says, saw this and I thought of you guys. And it's a link to Friday the 13th, the board game.
Okay.
Which I was as excited as you to learn about this, Chris.
Sure.
I even emailed it to you when you were on holiday.
Yeah.
But on closer inspection, it's actually a game called Last Friday.
Okay.
About a group of campers at a lake who are picked off one by one. Not actually affiliated with Friday the 13th.
Okay, so it's not officially endorsed
by the Friday the 13th franchise.
Okay.
However, I think we should still get it and play it.
Okay.
It's not out yet. It's out later this year.
Okay. Well, we'll look into that.
Yeah.
For sure. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Kieran. And another email in from a regular listener who says, I'm catching up on How to Survive for the last couple of days, which have been great. I had to take a break listening to Home Alone at work for laughing too much. Have you guys thought about doing Troll 2? Ridiculous horror with a cult following. Famous for how bad it was. It's been years since I've seen it, so I'm not sure how would it translate to a podcast, but it could be fun and worth some street cred.
Yeah, well, we try and sort of pair our selection of films, and there is a section of the website for upcoming films that we're covering.
That's HowToSurviveShow.com/soon.
Yeah, and we will definitely look into scheduling maybe a pair of famously bad films.
Yeah.
Because that might be good fun.
It might be. And that email, by the way, was from Callum. So thank you very much.
Thanks very much, guys. As ever, if you'd like to get in touch, the email address is howtosurviveshow@gmail.com. You can also get in touch on our new Twitter feed.
Yeah, brand new. Yeah.
Which is at howtosurvivepod, all one word.
Mm-hmm.
And
because at How to Survive Show is too many characters.
Yeah, by one, and at How to Survive was already taken.
Yeah.
Get in touch on that and give us a follow, and you'll receive updates of when the new episodes come out.
We might even just tweet out random stuff about movies we've watched.
Some of our random hilarious observations, Joe.
Like we watched Hail Caesar at the weekend, and no one's ever going to hear about that, are they?
No,
because we don't do podcasts about that.
Yeah, we don't do podcasts about films that aren't related to lots of people dying.
Exactly. But if you follow us on Twitter, maybe we'd tweet our thoughts on Hail Caesar, the Coen Brothers movie.
Yeah.
Maybe you'd hear where we thought it was weird and inaccessible to a lay audience, but you'll never know, will you?
No. Well, if you've enjoyed this episode or any of our back catalogue, then go onto iTunes and leave us a review.
Mm-hmm.
If you like us enough, it would be great if you could give us 5 stars.
Yeah. And if you don't like us, leave us 5 stars as well, because why not?
Well, the last thing we want is sarcastic praise.
Yeah. That would be awful.
Because everyone knows how well that translates over the internet.
Yeah, exactly.
And one person who did leave a 5-star review was Mark_with_a_mouth. And you can go and see his quite brilliant review on our iTunes review page. And Mark, yes, indeed, that is the real quiz. So thanks very much for listening. And next week we're covering 10 Cloverfield Lane. Yeah,
the new J.J. Abrams production, directed by someone else.
Dan Trachtenberg.
Yeah, exactly. So if you've seen it, email us, howtosurviveshow@gmail.com, or tweet us at howtosurvivepod with how you would survive in 10 Cloverfield Lane. And also just to forewarn you, further on in the future, the next film we're going to be covering is The Witch. So a couple of new
release films coming up. So if you've seen either of those, get in touch via all the usual methods.
Thanks very much for listening. See you next week.